And now we bring you this important message from Capcom.
Hi there, loyal Capcom fans. I'm Chris Kennedy, Head of Customer Relations for Capcom USA. Well, Resident Evil Village has finally been released, and I've seen so much glowing praise coming from its fanbase. We have heard how much you love this game, but mostly, how much you love the new villain, Lady Dimitrescu. Yes, that's right, we have seen how much you have been enjoying this character. However, I've started to hear from some of you that you're upset that Lady Dimitrescu is not in this game as much as you want her to be. Well, don't you worry, because I'm here to announce today that moving forward, Capcom is going to take the winning combination behind Lady Dimitrescu and apply it to all future Resident Evil games. Now, I know that some of you are concerned about the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake. Many of you have said there's no way that we could remake that game and make it better than the original. Well, what if I told you that now, Ashley Graham is going to be 12 feet tall? That's right, you thought we couldn't make Resident Evil 4 better? Wait until you see the kaiju fight that we have planned between Ashley Graham and a Gigante. And were you one of the customers out there who wasn't all that pleased with the Resident Evil 3 remake? Well, don't worry, we've got you covered. Because releasing later today is going to be DLC for the game that makes Jill Valentine even taller than Nemesis. Because apparently that's what all of you want. Right? Right? Alright, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Hey! Listen, I'm gonna be real with all of you out there. We don't know what you want anymore, and it's kind of driving us insane. All I see everywhere I look is just articles and videos now of people saying Capcom doesn't know what Resident Evil is anymore. That's all I'm seeing everywhere. Well, you know something? Maybe you don't know what Resident Evil is anymore. We took so much time trying to craft the perfect Resident Evil game for you guys. I mean, you like the action in Resident Evil 4, so we gave you more of that. But then in Resident Evil 6, all of a sudden, you hate the action in Resident Evil. So we decided to make Resident Evil scary again for Resident Evil 7, and you guys liked it, but you said it was now too scary. So we sat down and we focused and we tried to craft an experience for you that combined the best parts of all the previous Resident Evil games, and all you care about is the giant sexy vampire lady. Huh? Is that it? Is that all that's important to you? We took Resident Evil Village and we made a game that combined this huge giant map that had so many secrets inside of it and monsters that were fresh and imaginative and new for the franchise. But at the same time, we created a lore that tied everything together and we moved all these characters ahead. But Jerry in the character design department got caught looking at weird, creepy, giantess fan art, and he tried to pass it off like he was doing research for characters, and now everybody loves him. Is that what you guys want? Do you just want giant, sexy monster ladies? Well, too bad! We're Capcom, darn it! It's not like we just have an entire franchise sitting around full of sexy monster ladies we're not doing anything with. What the fuck is that number? Whatever, it's probably just spam. Listen. We want to make you guys happy, but you keep asking for different things. We try and make the game scary, but you don't want it to be too scary. And you want there to be action, but you don't want there to be too much action. And you don't want it to be goofy anymore, but then when we make it serious, you say it's not goofy enough. And you don't want there to be zombies in there anymore because you say that's boring. But then if we don't put zombies in there, you say that's not Resident Evil. Well, what is Resident Evil? What should we be putting in here then, huh? Dinosaurs? What, you just want a Resident Evil with dinosaurs in? Nobody wants a Resident Evil with dinosaurs. That's a stupid idea. Who the f*** is Regina? I gotta change this number. Listen, I know you're all sitting high and mighty right now on your articles and your YouTube videos saying we don't know what Resident Evil is anymore and that we've completely lost our way, but I'm gonna tell you exactly what's going to happen, huh? Okay? We're gonna put out one more game in this trilogy, and then a couple of little spin-off games in there. And they're gonna be more different than anything, and you're all gonna hate them. And then we're gonna go away for a couple of years, and then you're all gonna get desperate and beg for us to come back. Then we're gonna release a game that is completely 100% different than anything we've ever done with Resident Evil. And then you're all gonna say that we nailed it, and that Resident Evil is back, and it's exactly what it always should have been. How do I know that's what's going to happen? Because it's been happening for 25 years now, okay? It's been working out for us so far. So I hope that you all enjoy Resident Evil 8, and then when we get even weirder with Resident Evil 9, I hope you enjoy that too. Everybody happy? Great. And hey, if they're still not happy, then we can just turn all the monsters in Monster Hunter into giant sexy ladies. That should keep those thirsty weirdos happy.
Sir, the camera's still rolling.
Resident Evil Village, the 8th mainline installment in the franchise, give or take a few, is finally here, and beyond all the memes about the giant vampire lady, the game actually delivers another incredible chapter in this survival horror series. It continues the adventure of faithless protagonist and human Saw film Ethan Winters, as it's been years since he rescued his wife Mia from the baker's estate, and things have finally started to settle down for this couple. They've moved to Europe, they're raising a new baby Rose, things are beginning to feel normal for the couple again. That is, until one night when Resident Evil mainstay Chris Redfield breaks down their door, kills Mia, kidnaps Rose, and welcomes Ethan to the family. However, before Ethan can get any answers about this, Chris and his squad are attacked, and Ethan now wakes up to find himself in a strange, mysterious European village that looks like it came straight out of Grimm's fairy tale, except for the fact that everyone is speaking in an American accent for some reason.
And you drag a bloody man and an outsider in here like it's nothing?
The town is overrun with werewolves, and his daughter Rose has now found her way into the possession of this occult-like figure, Mother Miranda, who rules over the village with her 4 monstrous children, and Ethan is going to have to make his way through each of them to get her back. Now, I'm going to let you know right now, this game is great. By the time I was done with it, I walked away praising it to high heaven. However, that's not how the game began. Yeah, I want to let you know how much I love this game right out of the gate, because for the first 20% of it, I wasn't really feeling it. The game begins with Ethan having to fend off a wave of werewolves that you can't hope to beat, you can only survive them, and this is when you get introduced to the game's combat, which felt a little bit clunky, honestly. Maybe it's just because this opening is so similar to Resident Evil 4, get ready to hear that phrase a lot, so I was comparing the quicker, more reflexive over-the-shoulder combat of that game to the first-person combat of this game, but I couldn't help but look at some of these werewolves ripping through these doors, keeping my adrenaline levels high as they moved like wild, savage beasts, only for them to get close to you and then stop in their tracks and slowly creep up on you. It just felt odd to me, like they wanted to give you enough time to aim, and that worked for the Molded in the last game because they were just big lumbering zombies. But these were werewolves that just a second ago were ripping a house down. It completely broke my immersion because it felt like the video game had to stop to remind me this was a video game and we're in the tutorial level. Then we get to the first big map of the game, Lady Dimitrescu's Castle. This is easily the most hyped up part of the game, the thing that everyone has been looking forward to the most, and yeah, it just wasn't doing it for me either. Lady D chases you around the castle like Mr. X, except the police station in Resident Evil 2 had far tighter corners and smaller rooms, so when Mr. X popped into a room that you were in, or you turned a corner and you saw him, you had no idea how to get past him. But the rooms in here are far more spacious, so if I saw her coming towards me, I just rope-a-doped her around a table and I was out. And then there's the 3 daughters that act as mini-bosses, but honestly, they're not much of a threat either. They have one trick, and once you do it, you just have to shoot them a few times and they're down. Plus, as long as I'm talking about my complaints early on into the game, normally I wouldn't bring this up because this is something that you can adjust until you're fine with it. While the graphics are gorgeous and the settings are ominous and the scenery is breathtaking, it is way too dark, and that is not just me talking. Almost every single streamer and Let's Player I've watched has had to stop at some point and boost the crap out of the brightness. Wanna know how bad it is? Here's where I normally set things to play a game. Here's where I had to set it to play this game. That is indeed a significant adjustment. So yeah, up until this point, the game wasn't by any means bad. I was enjoying the game, but it wasn't blowing me away. I mean, I just beat the part of the game that everyone was hyping me up for, and it left me significantly less hyped. However, I am so glad that 90% of the advertisement was dedicated to the one giant lady in here, because now I was playing through the game completely blind, and this is when the game went from just okay to one of my favorite Resident Evil experiences. As I said, there's 4 children to Mother Miranda, and each of them is themed around a particular type of classic monster trope, and each of them have their own level dedicated to that theme. And these levels are great. They are so creative, they are so different, and they are designed so precise so that every single little bit of it feels like it is aiming you towards the direction you're supposed to go, and yet there's still just enough open space that you can explore and get lost within. Seriously, the second location that you go to after Lady D's castle, I won't spoil it, but it's one of the scariest things in any Resident Evil game. It felt like for 2 hours, Capcom just looked over at Konami and said, "You know we could make a Silent Hill game anytime that we want, right?" Seriously, Capcom, I'm not joking about this. I know you want Resident Evil to be a fun mix of both horror and action and goofy comedy and over-the-top B-movie tropes, but you do know that you have other franchises that could work as just horror, right? Like, just take the people who made that one level of this game, let them pick any one of those that they want and go nuts. Haunting Ground 2, it could totally be a thing, Capcom.
We interrupt this review for another message from Capcom. Hi there, Chris Candy for Capcom USA again. Just wanted to come in here real quick and say, please stop asking us about Haunting Ground. We don't know what that is. This has been another message from Capcom, makers of Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, and apparently that's it.
And that level was so welcome because so far this game had been kinda tense, but that was it. This is Resident Evil. At least part of it should be frightening, and they knocked it out of the park with that sequence. And after that, it returned to just being tense, but man, was it tense. One of the best staples of a survival horror series is, well, the survival element. It's not knowing if you have enough ammo, enough healing items. It's not knowing where to run in a moment of panic when you know that the wrong decision could spell doom. And I was sweating bullets at parts of this game as I would find waves of enemies running down on me, but ammo was becoming scarcer and scarcer. And this game kept the crafting mechanic from Resident Evil 7, which might seem like it would ease that tension, because now if you run out of supplies, you can just make more of them. But instead, it somehow makes things even worse, and by worse, I mean better. There is nothing quite like being chased down by so many monsters, and you are just running through every item in your inventory. Then you have to realize you have no more ammo and no more heals, so you have to open up your inventory and try and craft something on the fly, but now you realize you're starting to run out of crafting supplies. I love how the crafting mechanic just suckers you into thinking that it's your parachute. It is that thing that you can pull in case of an emergency, only for you to sometimes pull that cord and like Wile E. Coyote, an anvil just comes out. And the monsters become so much better too. Yes, there are still werewolves all over the place, but after that training level, the kid gloves are off and their aggression levels go through the roof, and this game knows how to set up an encounter. When you walk into an area and you see werewolves just perched on roofs in the distance like the final scene of The Birds, I always had to stop and think, oh, crap. That's going to be a problem, and I don't know if I have enough ammo to deal with it. There's also so many other types of enemies that you come across, and even when the game kind of gets stupid in the third act, not bad stupid, no, Resident Evil stupid. You know, B-horror movie we just threw the kitchen sink at you stupid, which has always been a part of the charm of this franchise. Every Resident Evil game ends up hitting that stupid level. It's part of the fun of this series. But when it hits that stupid point, even then the monsters still have a unified theme that fits what they're going for. And yes, these monsters feel very different from the types of enemies that we usually get in Resident Evil games, but that's not a bad thing. The Ganados in 4 felt different, and they became some of the best villains in the entire series. And when you get the explanation of how all these different monsters work within this universe, it fits. It still feels like we're in a unified Resident Evil universe. It still feels to me like they could easily exist right next to Mr. X or Nemesis or any of the other monsters that we've faced over the past couple games. And they're not the only new additions to this game, as you will be introduced to the Duke, a traveling mystery merchant who knows far more than he's laying on. Now, okay, again, this is another clear reference to Resident Evil 4, and they aren't even trying to hide it. We all love the merchant from that game, and we've had questions about him ever since, and this is the first time that we've gotten a merchant like him again, and yeah, it's exactly the same. You can buy new weapons, you can upgrade the weapons that you already have, and you can also sell any treasures that you find around the world. Now, I'll admit, even though I love the merchant in Resident Evil 4, I didn't know what to think about the Duke. Yes, I want some kind of a merchant to return, it's a great mechanic, but this game had been so similar to Resident Evil 4 so far that we were starting to hit that point where it didn't feel like a tribute anymore, it felt almost like we were just ripping it off. I mean, hell, the save room theme is almost an exact one-for-one reproduction. And as much as I love the idea of a merchant, it was now just another Resident Evil 4 reference on top of a game that was already loaded with them. Heck, I won't lie, I found myself looking at the Duke thinking, who does this guy think he is? Trying to come in here and take over for the merchant. Well, you're not the merchant and you're never gonna be the merchant. But man, did he win me over. Cut to the end of this game and the Duke was now one of my favorite Resident Evil characters ever. I'm not kidding about that, he's easily within the top 10. He's got this suave mysteriousness to everything that he says, and yet he's not a dick about it. He keeps dropping Ethan cryptic hints to help him along the way, but it doesn't feel like he's manipulating him, it feels like he actually genuinely cares about Ethan and his plight. Hell, by the end of this game, they fully made the relationship between Ethan and this mystery man an important part of the story, and it hit so hard. In Resident Evil 4, as much as I love the merchant, when it came to the story, he could have just been a vending machine. But the Duke by the end of all this feels like Ethan's most trusted ally, and you really find yourself growing attached to him. And he's not the only one. I can't believe I'm saying this, but despite how silly the game can get, despite how over the top some of the set pieces can become, despite the fact that this game has one of the dumbest moments in any Resident Evil game, no, seriously, I had to stop and think to myself, okay, is this dumber than Robo Salazar? Yes. Yes, it is. Is it dumber than punching the boulder in the volcano? Yep, it's dumber than that too. Is it dumber than the water slide through the planet as you blew up a shark? No, that one's still dumber. But despite all of that, this has easily the best story in any Resident Evil game. It has the most emotional moments. It has the most engaging twist. It's got one of the only final boss fights that is going to make you feel something other than just, yeah, take that, monster. Listen, I love Resident Evil. It's my second favorite video game franchise of all time, but I will gladly admit their stories are always pretty basic and just there to give you an excuse to fight monsters. Which is part of the charm. That is not in any way a negative, it's actually a strength of this series. Resident Evil has always known what it is and they know how to do it well. But this story attempts to be more emotional and deeper than anything that we've gotten before, and it's impressive how well they pulled it off. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. Sometimes they don't exactly know how to balance all the tones, and Chris does reappear later on with some information, but the game would have been much better off if he had been more of a recurring presence rather than something they saved until the very end. And when you find out why Chris did what he did in the beginning of the game, your immediate thought is going to be, why the hell didn't you say anything sooner? But beyond that, this game does so much with the lore, and it is stunning how they are able to tie this game into pretty much all the previous Resident Evils. Seriously, at the end of this game, you basically learn how this ties into 7, into the original trilogy. Hell, they even hint at how it ties into the 4, 5, and 6 trilogy, and it doesn't feel messy. It doesn't feel like they just swooped in here with some explanation that they pulled out of their butt at the last minute. It actually somehow manages to put a giant bow on multiple games that almost feel like they had next to nothing to do with each other. And as for Ethan, listen, I will admit there are still times where they don't know what to do with him. He tries to make the snappy one-liners like other Resident Evil heroes, and he just can't do it. It always comes off as stiff and awkward. Every time that he makes a joke, you just want to pat him on the back and say, hey man, it's okay. This just isn't your thing. Let's leave the one-liners to Leon and Chris, okay? But then there are other times where he sounds stressed. He sounds panicked. He sounds like he can't believe all the bull crap that he has to go through.
Seriously?
And that's when Ethan Winters works. That's when they capture what makes this character so good. He's supposed to be the everyman, the guy without the keg-sized biceps and the crazy Spider-Man level agility. He's the guy who has to go through the stuff that other Resident Evil heroes go through, but he doesn't have their training. He doesn't have their powers. He's that guy who is just trying his best against insurmountable odds. When he sounds like he is just exhausted, it plays in what makes him unique in this world full of super soldiers, and it makes you realize, wow, this guy really is working his ass off to save his daughter. And I won't say where his story goes, but it really is amazing to me how much they were able to do with a character who was literally designed to have no backstory or personality, so that way you, the player, could insert yourself into this one-time only character. This is a hell of a glow-up for such a boring nothing character. I just wish that we could have seen his face. Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I'm kinda done with faceless protagonists, especially considering how emotional this story ends up becoming. We really could have used a couple shots of Ethan's actual reactions. Heck, I won't spoil it, but let's just say the ending of this game comes down to a very emotional and dramatic moment for Ethan, and they are doing everything in their power to keep the camera off his face, and yes, that does kill some of the tension. And while we're talking about the ending, it is great, I loved it, it's an incredible way to top this game off. However, I can't lie. Where this game ends kinda makes me think, oh no. Are we about to get back into too stupid Resident Evil 6 territory again? I don't want to go back there. It took us years to pull ourselves out of that hole, and I am not prepared to go back in. We went into more detail about this in our spoiler talk, and I'll link you to it right now, but let's just say, yeah, it did leave me a little bit concerned. But for the most part, the story in here is great. The characters are handled incredibly well, and those aren't even the only areas where this game managed to outdo some of its predecessors. As I said, this game takes a lot from Resident Evil 4, especially with the village scene, but it also takes all those Resident Evil 4 elements and merges them with elements from all the other Resident Evils in a way that actually felt cohesive. Like the game became something that really showed off the best parts of numerous Resident Evils, and that includes the Metroidvania elements of the early games and of Resident Evil 7. At first, the village that you find yourself in, well, it doesn't feel like much. Just a handful of houses with some blocked off roads that you have to maneuver around. But every single time that you return to the village after being a boss, a new area will have opened up. You'll have a key to get into a new house, a new lockpick to open previously closed off doors, a new item to give you access to secrets, brand new villains roaming around, animals that you can kill for cooking supplies that you can use to increase your stats, or new treasures that make you raise questions about some secret plot that could possibly be going on in the background. They essentially took the Metroidvania aspect of the Spencer Mansion and the Baker Estate and applied it to an entire town, and it's brilliant. It has been so long since I played a game that rewarded backtracking like Resident Evil Village. I would find myself running back to previous dungeons just because, hey, screw it, maybe something was there now. And you know what? A lot of times, something was there now. You wanna know how good it gets? I found secret mini-boss fights in here. Seriously, I would run my ass off trying to get back to an area just to get a treasure. Didn't have anything to do with the story. It was totally optional, just wanted a treasure and that was it. Only to find, surprise, I'm in a boss fight now. And I love stuff like that. I keep hearing people complain about the length of this game, saying it's only about 10 hours long. First off, 10 hours is nothing to sneeze at. That is a decent chunk of time. But even then, I implore you, take your time. Resident Evil Village isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. And if you still think that there isn't enough content in here, this game incorporated what to me was probably the greatest addition to last year's Resident Evil 3 remake.
Now here's a weird door.
No, not that, although more Carlos would have been appreciated. No, I'm talking about the list of achievements at the end. Yeah, if you watched our video last year on the Resident Evil 3 remake, you know I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I thought it was just kind of okay. But at the end, when they revealed, hey, everything that you did this entire time all added up towards dozens of different achievements, and you earn points for each of them that you can now spend on crazy unlockables to enhance your New Game Plus playthroughs, As soon as I saw that, I was motivated to play that game again and again to keep getting more crazy prizes. Yeah, this game has got that exact same thing in it, and the prizes are even better. You can unlock a freaking lightsaber, which, okay, admittedly, it cost a lot and I'm not even close to getting it, but I did get the unlimited grenade launcher, and you better believe I am taking that thing into my second playthrough. That's what makes this game so good. In addition to the story and the gameplay, it just keeps rewarding you for playing it more and more, and by the end of it, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to play it more and more. Yes, I will admit it is a bit slow at the start, and the first level is certainly the low point of the game for me, but even with that, the rest of this game comes together so well, and by the end of this, it was one of my top 5 favorite Resident Evil games. So I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I love this thing, and while I am nervous about the next game, and while we're on the subject, I still don't think that we need that Resident Evil 4 remake. In fact, in all honesty, after 4 straight years of non-stop Resident Evil games, I'm kind of okay with us just taking a break in general at the moment. But man, even with all that, I am so glad that this game exists. Let me know your thoughts on this game down below, and as I said, we did a spoiler talk on, so if you want more of my thoughts on the story, then you can check it out right over there. Also, if you want to keep up to date with me and you want updates on the future of this channel, then you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/ThorgiesArcade, or you can head over to Twitch at twitch.tv/ProfessorThorgi. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.